64 minutes. That's how long it took Iga Świątek to dismantle Emerson Jones 6-1 in the opening set on Court Philippe-Chatrier today. 64 minutes, and the scoreline does not even begin to describe the violence of what happened out there on that terracotta clay. Now, I want to be precise here because the number 6-1 gets thrown around casually in tennis. It sounds like a routine afternoon for a top seed. But here's the thing, Jones had arrived in Paris ranked 136 in the world, having climbed, and I want you to sit with this, from number 640 just 2 years ago. She's 17 years old, a wild card, a Gold Coast girl playing her first ever Grand Slam singles main draw match. She came in with the kind of fearlessness that only someone with absolutely nothing to lose can carry. And Świątek broke her anyway. Broke her rhythm, broke her confidence, and I'd argue gave her a complete masterclass in what clay court tennis at the absolute highest level actually demands. But here's where it gets interesting, because what I saw in this match was not just a champion winning. I saw Iga Świątek sending a message to every single player left in this draw. And that message was brutally specific. I was watching the tape from the very first service game, and what struck me immediately was Świątek's returning position. She wasn't giving Jones any of that transition space that younger players rely. Jones, to her credit, went for it in the second game. A decent first delivery out to the backhand side, and Świątek just uncoiled a cross-court return that barely cleared the net tape and landed 6 inches inside the line. Full topspin, RPM, full aggression, no hesitation. The point was over in 2 shots. That is not a fluke. That is rehearsed, weaponized pressure. Now, here's the bit that actually bothers me about the mainstream coverage of this match, because I keep seeing headlines like "Comfortable Świątek Cruise," and I think that framing completely misses the analytical story. Jones actually held her second service game, coming back from 0 to 30 down and saving 2 break points in the process. If you're a purist, you're going to appreciate that moment, because for about 4 minutes, this 17-year-old stared down a 4-time Roland Garros champion in front of a full Chatrier crowd and refused to blink. She was mixing her serve, a kick serve to the tee, then a slice out wide, trying desperately to keep Świątek off balance. It bought her one game in the set, and then the machine came back online. What followed was a clinical dismantling that every coach in the locker room will be studying for the next week. Świątek's inside-out forehand was operating at a different level. I'm talking about ball striking so pure and so heavy that Jones, who, let's be clear, is not a pushover, by Khan, was routinely pinned 4 feet behind her baseline, scrambling to retrieve balls that were landing 3 to 4 feet inside the sideline. The depth was extraordinary. There was Sante's one rally in the fourth game where Jones hit what was objectively a decent defensive ball, mid-court, good height, cross-court. They did that, and Świątek stepped around it, hit a massive inside-out forehand that Jones literally did not move for. Not because she wasn't trying, because by that point in the point, there was no angle left to chase. Here's the broader context that the casual fan doesn't fully appreciate, and this is where I need you to understand the true weight of what we're watching. Świątek came into this tournament sitting on 114 career clay court wins. She has not lost before the quarterfinals at Roland Garros since 2019, 7 years ago, when she fell to Halep in the fourth round. 7 years of quarterfinal minimum results at this tournament. Her record in France across all tournaments is 45 wins, just 4 losses. This is not a tennis player who happens to be good on clay. This is a tennis player for whom clay is essentially a second language they were born speaking. And before you call this analysis a glorified victory lap for the tournament favorite, hear me out, because this is where the real conversation starts for the rest of the fortnight. The 2026 season has not been the Świątek of 2022 or 2023. She exited the Australian Open at the quarterfinals. The Miami Open saw a second round loss that genuinely rattled people in her camp. At Indian Wells, another quarterfinal exit. There were whispers, and I was hearing this from people trackside in Rome, that her movement wasn't as explosive as it's been in prior years, that she was maybe a step slower to the white ball on her forehand side. Real concerns? valid concerns, but watching her today against Jones, I'm going to tell you what I saw. I saw a player who has specifically sharpened her first strike tennis going into this tournament. The baseline aggression today was more front foot than I have seen from her in months. She was not sitting back and grinding. She was attacking second serves with intent, stepping into the court rather than waiting for the rally to develop. At 4-1, 15-30, she hit a return winner of a second serve, just absolutely ambushed it down the line with an inside in forehand. And I genuinely think that shot told the story of her mindset this week more than any stat could. Now, let's talk about Emerson Jones because she deserves an honest, unvarnished assessment. This is a player whose entire trajectory has been extraordinary. Number 640 to number 136 in 2 years. She was in the final of a WTA W100 in Gifu just 3 weeks ago. She can hit the ball cleanly. There were three winners she struck in this match, including one backhand pass in the third game that had Chatrier murmuring, and she serves at an above average level for someone her age, winning 62.9% of points on first serve this season. But her and match return game, only 26.7% of return points won in 2026, is where Świątek found the fault line and drove through it like a freight train. Jones simply could not put any meaningful pressure on the Świątek service games. And on clay, against a player with this baseline coverage, if you cannot manufacture a break point opportunity early, the set slides away from you fast. Too fast for a 17-year-old in her first Grand Slam to course correct in real time. This is not an indictment of Emerson Jones. And honestly, the fact that she held the game, that she competed on those two break points, that she didn't visibly collapse under the atmosphere, that tells me she has the mental constitution to be on this court again in much more competitive circumstances in 18 months. 2 years, I'd bet on it, but right now, today, she was chess pieces against a grandmaster. And the grandmaster had prepared. I was looking at the broader draw after this result, and here's the name that keeps coming up in the same breath as Świątek when I talk to people who follow the women's game closely. Arina Sabalenka, seeded first on the opposite side of the draw, who has beaten Świątek in three of their last four meetings. If both of them navigate to the final, and the draw suggests that is entirely plausible, with our shift back, I did it. We are getting a match that will define this clay season. Sabalenka's flat ball strikes differently on clay than it does on hard courts. She's adapted her game specifically for Paris over the last two seasons. Świątek knows this. The camp knows this. And I think part of what you saw today, the front foot aggression, the early breakpoint pressure, the willingness to shorten rallies, is Świątek calibrating specifically for that potential final week collision. Second seed Elena Rybakina is also in play. She's been dangerous on clay this season, and her serve is a weapon no one in the women's game has a clean answer to. But if Rybakina's second serve hold percentage dips below 60% on this surface, which it has done in two of her last three clay matches, she becomes vulnerable in third set situations. Świątek eats third sets for breakfast. Here's what the next 3 weeks of Roland Garros look like through my eyes. Świątek gets through the first week without drama. She should not drop more than 5 games in any single set before the quarterfinals, assuming the draw breaks the way it's projected. The real examination comes in the second week. If her movement holds, and today it looked sharp, she will reach the last four. From there, it's about whether the version of Świątek we saw today, the attacking first strike front foot version, shows up under semi-final pressure, or whether the tentative defensive player we saw in Miami resurfaces. My prediction, Świątek wins this title. Fifth Roland Garros crown. She addresses the crowd in French. She raises that Coupe Suzanne Lenglen, and she reestablishes beyond any reasonable argument that this surface belongs to her. But she will be taken to 3 sets at least once. I am almost certain of it. And whoever takes her there, whether it's Rybakina, Sabalenka, or someone else entirely, will spend the rest of their career telling that story. For the rest of the WTA Tour, the verdict from Court Philippe-Chatrier today is plain. Iga Świątek arrived in Paris, not as the flawed searching player of the Miami second round. not as the inconsistent qualifier of the Sunshine Double. She arrived as the four-time champion who already knows where the trophy lives. It's and if you're drawing her anytime before the final, you had better come with something considerably more than a 17-year-old's fearlessness. Because fearlessness, as Emerson Jones discovered today in 64 minutes on the biggest clay court in the world, is not enough. Not here. Not against her.